Hey guys, welcome to Mitch's Vinyl Corner and thanks for stopping by. So it's been a minute since I made a video, but I needed to take some time away, focus on myself for a little bit, and all I can say is life is excellent and I'm really happy to be back here on the channel. So today, going to be pretty short and sweet, but I wanted to do a shootout video of Black Sabbath's debut album, the birth of heavy metal right here. So I got two different versions that we're going to talk about. I have the new Rhino high fidelity version that was cut by Kevin Gray from the original master tapes. I say the Warner Brothers master tapes at Coherent Audio, and they were pressed at optimal. So I'll put this up here for you guys to see. The Obi was having a hard time staying up, so I just took it off. So really, really good thick tip-on jacket. Really heavy-duty cardboard. It's got the insert for it, which is really cool. They actually show you pictures of the front and back of the master tapes that were used. So that's really cool. And there's also some liner notes in here. I think this is a questionnaire with Tom Alome, who was the, I think the producer for this album back in 1970. So that's pretty cool. And then I have a 1971 UK Vertigo pressing. It's a fourth pressing on the legendary Vertigo label right here with the swirl on it. So this album was released in 1970, February 1970 in the UK, and June 1970 here in the United States. There is a difference in the track listings with one song. So on side 2, the first song on the UK version, you have Evil Woman. But in the US, that song was replaced with Wicked World. So just one track, but the rest of the album is pretty much the same from the UK. But they swapped some of the songs, but they all are on there. So for the shootout, I did it a couple days ago. The first one that I did was the new Rhino High Fidelity. Right off the bat, I knew this sounded excellent. It sounded really clean, really crisp, a lot of instrument separations, very detailed. Ozzy's voice was really up front. It was clear. Tony Iommi's guitar was right up there. Sounded really, really good. However, I will say I felt that the bass was lacking a little bit. And to me, when you're listening to a really good rock record, it's got to have force and it's got to have a lot of bite and drive to it. So, and I believe a lot of that comes from the bottom end. Like you're listening to like Led Zeppelin. You know it's a good copy if it's really got a good bottom end to it. But overall, minus the bass lacking a little bit, I thought this sounded excellent. Definitely one of the better versions I've heard over the years. Again, now I only have 2 copies, but I had other copies before, heard other copies, and this definitely impressed me. So really happy with it. Then I moved on to the UK version. Now I got this a couple of months ago from the UK, from a record store over there, and it's in really, really good shape. I would say it's a strong VG++. And if you know anything about Black Sabbath's debut album on the Vertigo label from the UK, you know that those go for a ton and a ton of money. Very, very good clean copies go for a ton of money. But even beat up copies go for well over $100. But I got this at a really, really good price. I did not pay a couple $100. I paid with shipping, because it had to come from the UK. Total was like $130. So I actually made out pretty good with this one. Right off the bat with the Vertigo, it had the bass that the Rhino Hi-Fi version was missing. It was really present there, and it wasn't overblown. It had that extra kick that the Rhino Hi-Fi I felt was missing. Really good instrument separation on here. I felt Ozzy's voice was a little bit pushed back, not muffled, but it was pushed back a little bit. Tony's guitar was also pushed back a little bit, but it's got that thunderous bottom end that this record definitely needs, because this is Black Sabbath. This was not an audiophile recording by any means. This wasn't Sgt. Pepper's or Dark Side of the Moon or Miles Davis Kind of Blue. It wasn't. It was not an audiophile record to begin with. But I kind of want that doom, that kind of darkness to it. So I felt that the Vertigo pressing had that, and the Rhino Hi-Fi version I felt was a little bit too polished, but still excellent. Still, I will definitely listen to this version again for a long time, because I'm not looking to get rid of these two by any stretch. So I honestly, in my personal opinion, I prefer the UK Vertigo. Now, the thing about the Rhino Hi-Fi is that it was cut from the original master tapes, but they were the Warner master tapes. I said earlier that the UK version came out earlier, so the US had to wait a couple of months. So what Vertigo did was they sent the master tapes to Warner Brothers here in the United States. Either they sent them here or a representative went over there. Either way, they made a copy tape of the original Vertigo master tape. So you're losing a generation, right? That could explain maybe the lack of bass, or maybe just Kevin Gray's mastering choices for this one. And I am a huge fan of Kevin Gray. I met him personally. Pretty much everything he does is outstanding and spectacular. And this is outstanding and spectacular. However, I prefer the UK version just a little bit more because it's got the bass, and I felt the bass here was missing. So that could explain it, maybe because the tapes were a generation removed. One other copy that I wanted to just bring up, but I don't have, is the original first US pressing. Some people call it the Greenie because it had the green Warner Brothers label. A lot of people swear by that one too. A lot of people say it's better than the UK Vertigo, or vice versa. It's better. But I know that one's highly praised. Original copies, they're available here. You can find them. I find them here all the time at record shows, and so you see them online. You can get decent copies for under $100. And if you don't want to get either of these pressings, you can go get an original first US pressing, for pretty good money. If you want a cleaner copy, they're going to cost a lot more, because, like I said, this record was played a lot and it was probably not taken care of. I've seen white label promos, US white label promos, go for a couple $100, because those ones are the ones that are in better shape and not as beat up. However, I do recommend that if you do get an original first US pressing, make sure it's an artisan pressing. That was the pressing plant that pressed that particular album. So if you're looking for a first US pressing, I recommend you go with an artisan pressing, because that's what I've heard, and that's pretty much the consensus when it comes to the first US pressings. So if you don't own either of these albums, if you don't own a UK, a US, you just don't own this album at all, but you want a good copy, the default is go for the Rhino High Fidelity. You are going to be very, very happy with this. You're not going to have any complaints. Just to me, I felt it was a little bit too polished. And when I'm listening to Black Sabbath, I don't want polished. I want in-your-face, rock, dark, gritty, raw. That's kind of how I like to listen to Black Sabbath. It's still available. It's $40. When this originally came out last year, they were numbered to 5,000. They sold out super quick. They were going for well over $200 on eBay. I'm happy I waited. I didn't buy one. They're now back in print, unnumbered versions. They're $40 on Rhino.com. You'll be very, very happy if you don't own a copy and you don't want to look for either a UK original or a US original. You don't want to go spend the time looking, maybe spend the money. This is just a great option for you to get. Now, if you're like me and you want to spend a little more money to get the pressing that you want, get a Vertigo pressing. Now, get a Vertigo pressing, or I also heard that the later WWA pressings in the UK, I'll put the label up here, those were done later, I believe, after Vertigo, they maybe sold them to them or they lost the license. I'm not sure the details, but I think from 1973 onwards, for this album in particular, from what I've seen on Discogs, they're on the WWA label. And the thing about the WWA label is that they use the same metalwork as the Vertigo pressings did. So the exact same metalwork. So it's essentially you're getting the Vertigo pressing just on a different label. It's going to save you a little bit more money. I think they're more readily available. So if you want to go down that route for a UK pressing, I highly recommend. I just happened to luck out with this one, so very happy that I took it when I did. So overall, this was very fun to do. I really enjoyed this shootout. I'm definitely going to listen to both copies. Definitely from now on. If I want to get, clean, crisp sound, I'm going to grab the Rhino Hi-Fi. If I feel like raw, down and dirty Black Sabbath, I'll reach for the UK pressing. So like I said, really enjoyed this. My next video is actually going to be another Black Sabbath album. It's going to be Black Sabbath Paranoid. I just ordered a couple days ago the new Rhino Hi-Fi Black Sabbath Paranoid album. And I'm going to compare it with my 1973 UK pressing that I have. So stay tuned for that. Hopefully I'll be able to do that one sometime next week. But had a lot of fun doing this, guys. It's really good to be back on the channel, and thank you to all my subscribers and all my friends, family that have supported me through the time that I was away. But really happy to be back. So thank you all for stopping by, and I'll see you all next time.